Hey everybody, it's Bert, and welcome to episode 3 of Building an Exocet with Bert and his team. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let you know right off the bat, I have started a Patreon for our YouTube channel. YouTube has literally demonetized everything that we have, and we are making no money. I mean, it is the adpocalypse, really, it is. And I had this suggested to me by a lot of people that, you should try Patreon. So you know what? I'm going to take the community's advice and I'm going to start a Patreon and see where it goes. Maybe it'll end up being something really good for us and we can get a lot of overwhelming support and we can make some awesome content and give a ton of stuff away. That'd be awesome. I don't really know what it'll do. I'm kind of on edge as to using it or not. I will let it run for a month or two, see what kind of feedback we get from people, what kind of outcomes we have. And if it's positive, we'll leave it up. If it's not positive, then obviously we'll take it down and we'll try something different, or we'll just continue as we always have. But a couple bucks here and there from everyone every month would really help us do more. It would help us keep the garage warm during the wintertime, because in Pennsylvania it gets really, really cold, and we wouldn't, freeze to death when we're out there working on our projects. And it would help us do other things around the shop to help make better videos, because right now we have one camera and it's not that great. And some other things that would be really beneficial as far as providing better tutorial videos for everyone. So if you like the content we make, or you just want to support us because you love us, go ahead and go to the link in the description for our Patreon and support us. A couple bucks here and there every month would make a hell of a difference. Now with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the video. Welcome to Bert's Garage, a YouTube miniseries dedicated to building an Exocet out of a fully functioning Mazda Miata. We're going to be pulling apart a 1999 NB and building one hell of an Exocet. You guys better strap in and hold on. This is going to be one hell of a ride. And first to arrive is Bert, avid YouTuber and 3D printing enthusiast. He likes big guns and he likes to go fast. And the next member of our team to arrive is Doug, all-around Miata expert and good guy to have on your side when you're working on a Miata, because he's never wrong, and he reminds you because he's never wrong. And last but not least to arrive is John, Miata expert, turbo expert, good all-around mechanic, and the guy you want to talk to about boost. You want to go fast? He's the guy to talk to, especially in a Miata. And now that you've met our team, it's time to get to work. First things first, we're going to need tools and supplies. Here we have a bolt organizer, very, very important. It has 4 individual trays with several individual little pockets to put things. Make sure you label everything, because if you don't label things, you're gonna have a bad day. Second, really big stuff up top, or really awkward things like camber bolts and things that are too big to fit in those. Obviously you want to individually bag them and keep them together, or you're gonna have a bad day. Make sure you keep these in some sort of an order, that way so when you start rebuilding, you can work your way backwards from where you started. Now let's move on to tools that we're going to need. We're going to need a Master Mechanic tool set here. We have 1/4 inch, 3/8, and 1/2 inch drive. We're going to need sockets ranging from 27 millimeters all the way down to 8 millimeters, I think, is the smallest we need. All 6-point sockets, otherwise you're going to end up rounding bolts, and that's going to be a really bad thing, as well as a large breaker bar. Then we're going to need screwdrivers, from flathead and Phillips head screwdrivers all the way down to the smallest ones for those pesky trim pieces, an impact driver, impact bolt, universal joints, painter's tape, magnetic trays for your bolts, deep well sockets, needle nose pliers, dikes, a larger pair of dikes, and a flashlight. And now that we've got that figured out, let's get to work.
Okay, so back to removing dash. We are moving back into getting rid of the A-pillars because they are in the way of pulling the dash out. And what we've noticed here is this weather stripping is going to have to come completely off. So I'm going to work my way down here to the bottom of the door frame, get a hold of it down here. And we're just going to do one continuous pull of this guy, and there's a little glue underneath here, so it can be a little problematic to remove, but...
And that's what's keeping all of your wonderful rain out.
Oh, and we've also got a...
grommet?
Yeah, a little tab here, so we're going to grab a panel floor. It's just got a vertical ridge up here, and then we're going to work around the other side and do the same.
Look at that. Oh, yeah.
Years and years of blood.
It's actually relatively clean. Surprisingly.
Oh, it's a little heavier than I expected.
What is that? What do you think?
Oh, this is probably a good 5 to 7 pounds right here.
5 to 7 pounds. Oh yeah. Cha-ching.
Goodbye.
Oh my god, yeah, that does sound like it's got some weight to it.
Yeah, let me have my little T-tool down here.
And then what is that S bit? It's an S4?
Well, it's a Torx bit, actually. This is a security version of a Torx bit, but it's just because it's what I have. And I think these guys are like a T45 or a T60 something. It's a very large Torx bit. Not going to find this in your normal setups. So we're just going to remove the 2 bolts underneath the latch. And then this is just going to have some pop tabs to remove. Fortunately, this is a not airbag A-pillar.
Yeah, that would be much more interesting, wouldn't it?
Yep. So we're going to take that guy off, and we'll have to take this light off before we can take the top section off, but that's not overly relevant to us right now.
And to make it more relevant, that light never worked until the day we started pulling this car apart.
There you go. Wow. Oh wow, that was really on there.
Yeah, these little rivets, especially when they're in metal instead of plastic.
Hey, Hank.
Yeah, you can see where
Oh my God, the whole dash is just
it's all
moving.
held on by the steering wheel now.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and pull off the steering wheel. You said it looks like a 12.
It does look like a 12. All right, so I am in the middle of contortioning to odd angles the human body should not do. Here's our obviously driving steering wheel, and underneath this guy, there are 2 what looks like 12mm bolts that go on either side of the steering column, and we need to go ahead and release those so that way we can bring the steering column down.
Hold the steering wheel so it doesn't bust your friend in the face, possibly.
Yeah, I'd feel pretty good on my neck right about now. Doesn't matter, it's part of a wiring harness. They stay intact.
Even if you don't need a certain part of the wiring harness, say the door, don't cut it. Just put it in the box that Exocet will send you. Pay the extra money, get the metal wiring tray, put it in there, and forget about it. Don't cause yourself more headache and heartache, please. Don't be like those other guys, because I've seen people do that. We're not doing.
Yeah, the hazard light. That's the one thing.
Don't cut the hazard light.
No, hazard light.
You have to keep that.
Super duper important. As a matter of fact, we'll leave that on here for now. If you do not leave this guy connected, this little floppy dongly bit,
Mark it.
yeah, your turn signals will never work, and you will spend a lifetime trying to figure out why you have no turn signals. It's because you didn't put your hazard switch back, or you cut the line that went to it, and by that chance, good luck.
Yep, pretty much.
All right, so when inevitably you're going to pull your dash out of the car and you're trying to figure out why it won't come away, more than likely you've still got a lot of electrical stuff connected to the dash. And in our case here, we have the fuse box over here on the driver's side still attached and what looks like 2 Phillips screws here. So we're just going to dive in, take these 2 Phillips screws out.
And believe it or not, you really need your fuse box. It's actually kind of important.
Did you hear that dash whole seat?
The whole dash just unseated itself.
Alright, and now fuse box is pulled off and clear, and of course it's attached to a metal bracket down there.
So that was attached to everything else.
And odds are you're going to have a whole bunch of other pieces of wiring that are still taped and or bracketed to the dash. Go figure. So it's just a matter of
Slowly working your way through it.
Yeah, pretty much one after another until you find them all, and then you get to take it out. Oh, and please unhook the battery. You don't want this airbag going off in your face. Don't be stupid.
Or do you?
I mean, if it's Darwinism, then I just say let it go off in your face and blow your face
That's why
off.
there's no warning labels.
That's very true.
Alright, so dash is officially out. This thing sucked to remove. There is a lot of wiring harnesses, as you'll take a look at this guy right here that basically ran and looped around the steering wheel. There's a lot of different connectors that are holding it on to different places in the back. You'll even find a little strapped ground wire. This connector here, very difficult to remove if you don't know what's going on. You've actually got to pry in underneath and pull this little green tab halfway out before the wiring harness will connect. And we still need to remove this section from the back of the dash to interconnect both the driver and passenger side main wiring harness bits, but we've got it completely free here. We've got about a 45 pound dash. You've got to maneuver the steering wheel down and out of the way to try and get the dash over it. It is difficult having a second set of hands. Probably pretty important. I couldn't imagine trying to do this one by myself right now. But here you can see we are down to the basics, and we can pretty much just about get this carpet clean and clear. We may or may not even need to do that at this point, but we have our wiring harness is free that we can start to get those loose of the body. So here we are.
And a big thing to remember when you're pulling out the dash, if it doesn't come relatively easily, you have more wires attached. So just be mindful, take it easy. Don't Hulk strength this, because you will rip connectors and wires, and then you're going to have a bad time. So take your time, be mindful, look plenty, and double check everything.
Dash is out, starting to clean out some of the interior here and what's going on, and trying to recoup wiring harnesses. And if we look kind of behind where we're going at there, we've actually removed the airbag from the dash panel. This is
So the airbag is technically considered a explosive device, so you do have to remove this before you can put out anything for the trash if you are going to. You don't want to be visited by your local PD saying, "Sir, why did you put an explosive device out in your trash?" Even if you're a redneck, please don't do that. That's like a class 3 or class 4 device. So treat it like gun ammo. You wouldn't put gun ammo in the trash if you're semi-intelligent. For the rest of the wiring harness that is attached to the front of the dash, you obviously want to go about recovering this very carefully because you will need this. I know there's a lot of stuff in here that, yes, that puppy right there, your hazard light. There's also some grounds.
Yep, we got a ground right here. I had a little 10
And there's another ground right
here.
there.
There's a ground right there as well. Sorry about doing that with the camera. But you have to be sure not to screw this up at all. Treat this with the utmost of respect. Put it in a box somewhere and keep it out of harm's way because you are going to need it for the future. And label anything that you do need. As I've said before, almost every single connector on this car is completely unique, so you won't have to worry about connecting the wrong things. So just be very careful. Now on this car, it had a aftermarket immobilizer that some genius decided to install because back in the late 90s, everything got stolen. So we don't know if it's really attached. We're just going to kind of leave everything the way it was, not screw with it too much, and hopefully when we plug it into the Exocet, everything works. If not, we'll tackle that bridge when we come to it. So at this point now, we're going to start pulling out the ECU, probably remove the steering wheel and everything else that goes along with that, and then we'll pull the rest of the guts inside here, clean up, and hopefully start working on the engine.
So what we're going to do here is we're going to remove the steering wheel. Not really positive we need to do this, but we're going to need to do this at one point or another, so we're just doing it now. And as you can see, the airbag is now missing from this. It's just a matter of removing two little covers here on the back side, and there's a 10mm bolt in each one of those. Just remove those out of here, and the whole airbag will come free, and you'll need to remove it from this little connector. It's a spring-loaded connector. You got to push it pretty deep before this guy will come unloose. And, you know, again, you're dealing with an airbag. Make sure everything's discharged. Make sure you're not going to have any type of static shock going on there. You don't want that guy to blow up while you're working on this. And then,
You're going to have a bad day.
Yeah. So I've also removed the little single red wire connector from down here in the clock spring. This is your horn. And then here we are going to use a 13/16 socket. Not really sure that that's absolutely correct because it should be standard, but it's what we had. And you're going to get on this nut right here in the center. And then this guy's going to be pretty tight. You might need to hold on to the steering wheel to get it loose. But here, this is already broken, so we're going to take it down.
That fits on there snug, though, doesn't it? That 13/16?
It does, but, you know, nothing is standard on this car.
That's what I know. It's like...
So there's that guy right there. Those are actually one-time use bolts. You're not supposed to reuse those again later, so because they stretch to yield. And so once you've used that one's pretty much toast.
We'll keep it just in case.
Warm, buttery toast. We're gonna... Don't want to pry against this clock spring either because this guy's plastic, so you don't want to damage that. We may just have to get some additional leverage in here.
Oh. Yay!
Off she comes.
Yay! And how much does that weigh, you think?
It's probably like 3 pounds. I mean, it's not much without an airbag there. This little guy's not a whole lot of weight.
No, it's not. But we're going to be replacing it with probably something else because maybe we'll keep the airbag. It might be important. A little bit of safety in this car could go a long way since there's, like, you are the crumple zone. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to remove the rest of the air conditioning system. So you've got the centralized unit here. You've got the blower. You've got a whole bunch of connectors coming out of here that you'll want to label for all that stuff as well. Up here, we're pretty sure that this is
That's the airbag control module.
That's the airbag control module. So this is pretty much like a G sensor or an accelerometer. So you don't have any sensors that we think at the front of the car as far as, you know, if those get tripped, the airbag goes off. So you will want to keep that because if you build this and you don't have that hooked up, you're probably going to get a bad engine code and you're going to have a check engine light, which would be bad. So yeah, be careful on that one. And again, whenever you're pulling apart the harness, be very careful, like Doug is doing here. Don't damage anything. Don't force it. Just be very, very, very careful.
Sing it some Barry Manilow if you have to.
Huh?
Sing it some Barry Manilow if you have to.
Okay. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and pull the rest of this harness apart. I can't really
describe or tell you exactly how to do that. If you've gotten this far in the project and you don't understand to properly and carefully pull apart the wiring harness, you should probably stop and reconsider your life's choices.
Also keep in mind too, every single one of these had a different trim model and had different options, and the first and second gen Miatas had different wiring harnesses for each option. So yours may not be exactly the same as this one. You may have additional or less connecting points. Just keep in mind that you just need to be aware of what's where, what's still attached somewhere, and take that with caution.
What he said. Okay, so while Doug is working on removing the rest of the wiring harness from the inside of the car, I'm going to go ahead and unattach the hoses leading to the heater core that is also inside the car, because those are kind of all connected, and in order to get the central dash portion out, we have to remove the attachments for the heater core and all the piping and everything. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. I can suggest heavily to get one of these tools. This is a hose clamp utility tool. Works very, very well. I would suggest getting one of them. So what we're going to go ahead and do is pull these two hoses here that run to the heater core inside the car. This runs your coolant so that, you know, it runs through the engine and then it runs through the inside, and that keeps you nice and warm in the wintertime when you're freezing your ass off or in those cool mornings. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect these. Obviously, we've already taken out the radiator. We've drained all the coolant. There might be a little bit of coolant left in there. Again, you're not reusing anything on the interior for trim of this car, so you don't have to worry about getting anything dirty. Just be sure to always clean up the antifreeze, because that stuff is very toxic, and if you have pets or small children, you don't want them to get a hold of it. All right, so we've removed all of the internal garbage, so to speak. The heater core is removed. We removed the hoses on the front, which allowed us to then remove the heater core. Go ahead and set it over there. It is still going to have coolant in it, a little bit at least. The footrest obviously has to also come out before you can remove the rest of the carpet on the interior here. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to wear a respirator when you're pulling this out, just to kind of keep your nose at bay from, you know, getting super pissed off at you and sneezing everywhere. And then once we do that, we're going to go ahead and start unattaching the wiring loom from pretty much everything in here and pushing it through the firewall. So let's have some fun.
Alright, so based on what we're looking at here, we believe that we need to take this fender off to get access to where the main wiring harness comes across over the driver's side of the car and makes an escape through a little corner hole over here. Looks like it's going to travel somewhere inside of the fender, probably not over in this area. So we're going to try and remove this fender here to get access to what we're looking at.
Well, what about right here, Doug?
What's that?
It comes out right there.
Yeah, that's not the same size as what's coming through, because that little guy over there, and take a look at what's coming through over here.
Oh my!
Yeah, you're putting 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. That's not the case.
Okay. So go ahead and undo all the 10mm bolts up here.
Yep. You
undo the headlights.
You don't have to undo the headlight, but you do have to remove the one from
back
inside
there
of the door jamb, and then there's two more down here at the bottom that we're going to do real quick here. Here is we are going to remove the fender liner from inside of here, just to make sure that there's no additional bolts that we need to get access to, and we're going to need to do this eventually to do things like take the front bumper off. And what I am doing now is identifying everything that is standard Phillips screws under here to remove those. But most of the rest of these, if your car still hasn't been messed with from the factory, are going to be these little plastic riv nut styles, and I'm just going to use a little panel puller here, and I'm going to do the easy way out of just ripping these guys off. And then also here on our donor car, we have
mud flaps.
Factory mud flaps. So we're going to have to make sure we adequately remove those too. Come on. I don't care if you break or if you die, but get out.
Do keep in mind that the mud flaps on these original Miatas are actually worth a little bit, so you can recover, you know, 15, 30, maybe $50, depending on how good a shape and what color you got. So do be mindful that you can sell that as well to recoup a little bit of your build cost. Every dollar counts. We just sold the exhaust the other day to a YouTube subscriber who actually called me and asked for some mechanical knowledge, and I had to consult with Doug, and we got him sorted out, and we're going to be giving him the exhaust. So you know, every little bit that you don't need counts. And we don't need the exhaust because we're putting a turbo on it, and we can't use a stock exhaust with the turbo. So yeah.
What are we doing? All right, we are doing the last of removing the front bumper here. So since we've removed the under tray and the fender liners, and on the driver's side we've taken off the fender at least.
Well, we found a whole bunch of dirt so that we could start a garden from inside of my wheel well. That was wonderful.
Yeah, you want to talk about weight reduced out of the car. That was probably more than anything else we've pulled. So anyways, you've got a series of a couple of bolts, the screws that we took off of the fender liner at the side, and then pulling away from the little snap tab over there is pretty much how the sides stay together. Then you may or may not have some Phillips screws underneath, and as you may recall from earlier, we also removed the series of 4 bolts from up above by the headlights. So those have already been removed. We've just essentially got one last thing that's keeping this bumper on here, and it's the series of 2 little Phillips screws down here attaching it to the crash bar. And we're just going to go ahead and remove these guys, and we will be able to just pull the bumper clean and clear.
Alrighty, so we've gone ahead and we've removed the front bumper, and then we're going to go ahead and remove the other quarter panel in the front here, and then that will allow us to obviously remove a lot of the other unnecessary things, a little bit of weight savings, giving us more room obviously to work on other stuff. This is all right here, fuel management, fuse box, that's the windshield wiper relay and all that stuff, which we don't really need, so we can remove that. But we still need to pretty much take everything off this car so we can label the wiring harness and go ahead and start pulling everything out of here so we can then drop the tub eventually. So, yep, we're going to go ahead and keep pulling apart the fender, and make sure whenever you do this part, if your quarter panels are in good shape, try not to beat them up too much, mainly because those are actually worth a decent bit of money. Ours don't have any dents, they have very few scratches, they have no rust, so you could recover a good $100, $200 for those altogether, which, you know, you could get yourself maybe a pack of coilovers once you're done with all this, or maybe a nice set of seats. So, yep, other than that, we're going to keep on going at it. All right, now we're going to start working on the dash and dash area, instrument cluster, and overall, the pedal assembly. Now, we've got a ton of wires and stuff in here. It's going to just about everything, and I'd like to get some of this removed so we can get to more of it. And unfortunately, the steering column is sort of in the way, but what's really in the way is the pedals. So you got your clutch, your brake, your gas, and then you got the housing assembly that it all runs to way back in here. This is held on by a ton of 10, it looks like 12mm bolts. So you're going to need a deep or very long extension, a ratchet, and you're going to want to take all this stuff apart. And obviously, once we get that out, there's a lot of rust on a lot of this stuff. It's not heavy rust, but we're going to send it away to get media blasted and powder coated. That way so it looks awesome. So let's go ahead and pull out the pedal assembly. I've gone ahead and I've removed the steering column. Now, the steering column, once you unhook everything, there's a little bolt right here. You can undo that. It's just a simple 12mm. Undo it, and the actual whole assembly will come out as it's sitting right there. And then the pedal assembly is just held on with a whole bunch of bolts and some cables, as well as a single pin that goes right here that you have to take off for the brake, and then that all pulls out. Now the clutch is a little bit of a different story. There's a bolt that you have to take out that's up here, and then there's also a couple bolts coming through the wall, as well as you actually have to unhook the clutch master cylinder from the 2 12mm bolts here that are attached to the wall, and then you can actually get the entire clutch assembly to just come right out, just like that. And there will be another cable attached to it in the back. It's very, very, very hard to get to. I'm trying to show it to you here, but there's an absolute disaster of wires going to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach this, and then I will show it to you in a minute.
All right, welcome back. So moving on from our interior and starting to strip apart this body here, we're going to bring focus back up here to the engine. And at this point, we are going to start trying to remove the exhaust from the car. As you can see here, you're going to have a heat shield like this. This is a California spec model, which you can identify by having an O2 sensor, the primary being all the way up close to the engine exhaust manifold. You'll have another one downstream, whereas the non-California will have longer headers, and it'll have catalytic converters further down along with your O2 sensors. So just bear in mind where those are at, because you are going to want to remove those. We're going to start here today though with this heat shield, and you can see there's a series of 5 10mm bolts around this guy. It's the same whether you have a California spec or not. And we're going to take the 10mm ratchet here, and we are going to take each of these, and we are going to start removing them. All right, so here, heat shield's completely off. We got the series of bolts off of here. There actually was 6 instead of 5. There was one more down here below the oxygen sensor. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove this guy before we get to these bolts that hold the manifold onto the head. First thing you want to do whenever you're removing an oxygen sensor, you'll want to trace your wire back. And here we're going to find this guy's going to connect at the front of the engine. And you'll just want to pull and disconnect that here because you're going to be twisting this wire. You don't want to break a wire off. Otherwise, you're going to need a new oxygen sensor. And then here today, we're going to take a 22 millimeter oxygen sensor. Some people like to call these like a crow's foot. I love these things. You just take it, slip it on here, and we'll put it on. And then we'll just take our ratchet, thread it right in there. And you pretty much just make sure you've got everything the right direction and break it loose.
Once you break it loose, you clearly don't need to use that anymore either.
Some of them you don't, relative depending on whether or not the O2 sensor is new enough or if it's been seized in there for a long time or whatever else it might be. You know, this guy looks like a spacer.
Someone put a spacer on this at one point, yeah.
But hey, whatever, it works. So now that's free.
Yes, indeed. And we'll go ahead and put you in the parts bin. Probably wouldn't hurt to get a new one of those anyway.
Well, we'll be needing that for later.
Yeah. Going ahead and taking off the manifold. These are what size? 14 millimeters?
14 millimeter.
14 millimeters. Now, it depends on your car. These are actually coming off with relatively little ease. We actually haven't had to use any penetrating fluid, but if you want to use something like this, it's just blaster, penetrating oil. If you get a bolt that is stuck really, really bad, spray this on, come back like an hour, later, or somewhat like that. Come back an hour later, and a lot of times you'll find the bolts have actually loosened and you won't break any of them off. And believe me, breaking a bolt off in your block is a huge pain in the butt, and you don't want to do that. So just be very mindful that when you work on these, don't over torque it because you will break them. And then you're going to have a bad, right, Doug?
Yeah, really bad day. You're going to be taking studs out of a head. It sounds expensive.
Yeah, it is a bit expensive, actually. Don't do it.
Alrighty, guys. So I know we haven't gone over the wiring harness a lot. A lot of people would probably want us to do that.
Here's our wiring harness. Now, every single time we unplugged anything, we labeled what it went to.
That's not rocket science. That is just simply good accounting for everything. Now, the wiring harness on your car is going to be different from ours. Depending on what your trim level is, what you had on your car, it's going to vary. It really will. And that's one reason why we haven't really gone through it. Removing a wiring harness is a lot of patience, a lot of clipping small tags that are holding them on, and you just have to be very careful. Don't force anything. Your harness comes apart in 3 pieces. One piece comes out over there in the corner, and that's this. The other piece, that's mainly in the engine bay. You can leave all that there and just wrap it around the block. You don't have to unattach any of that. It'll save you a lot of headache and heartache going forward. And then the other piece actually unplugs right here with that white connector, and then is all of this. So your wiring harness in essence is 3 pieces. And just be sure to mark absolutely everything. So know it going forward. It says, windows, window control. Well, you obviously don't need that. So you can just leave that. You can put that somewhere, or you can cap it off on the loom. I wouldn't suggest that. Just wrap it up some electrical tape and just tuck it away. Best way to do it, really. As far as the trunk here, we've pulled out all of the carpet and we've removed the battery. We've pulled out the harness up through there. And the only thing we really have left here is the antenna. And we have a powered antenna, which we are going to be selling because that's probably worth something. And then we unhooked the gas from here. There's just 4 small bolts. Make sure you don't drop any bolts down your tank. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. Now, once we get to this point, obviously unhooking the hoses from all of this here is going to be very important because then it will allow us to later lift the chassis up and off. But what we're going to do now is we're going to touch on unhooking everything from the underside of the car with the evap system, because that will be the same. That will be the same pretty much regardless of your car make or model or whatever trim level. That'll be the same. So now we're going to touch on removing all the wiring pieces that come down here for your evap system. And a lot of it racks in with the brake line and all that, and that's okay, but you want to be very careful with this because obviously you're working with your brake lines and fuel areas, and you just want to make sure you don't spill and make a mess, which we haven't done yet, thank God. So let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Bert. Thank you for joining us for this episode. We are having an awesome time building the Exocet, and we are getting so freaking pumped up because this is coming apart so easily, and we know that it's not going to be too long until we actually start putting this whole thing back together and we have a fully functioning Exocet. The kit is coming in, I think it's like 9 weeks, so it'll be here in a little bit. Obviously that gives us plenty of time to get everything pulled apart, powder coated, and put back together and ready for the chassis to arrive. And then the chassis is going to need a little bit of prep work, and then we're going to send it off to being powder coated, and then when we get it back, obviously it's going to be the final assembly. So do bear with us. We're going to try and put out an episode again every week. I'm going to try and keep it around 25 minutes. Other than that, we're having a great time. And other than that, we're just going to have to wait until the next episode comes out next week. So as always, guys, I am Bert from Pixel Armory. Like, favorite, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.